Hey, Cal here. As you may have noticed, we didn't publish the Playing with Power podcast onto YouTube for a while. Well, we're working on fixing that. On our normal off weeks, we'll be uploading the missing 7 episodes here for you to watch. On this episode, Hire and Ashani dive into all things Major League Commander. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Playing with Power podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things cEDH, EDH, and Magic the Gathering. I'm your host, Alex.
And I'm your co-host, Ashani, and today we're talking about all things Major League Commander.
Before we go any further, I wanted to talk quickly about our sponsor, TC's Rockets. TC's Rockets has one of the largest collections of toys, comics, and games in San Diego, with thousands of MTG cards being added to their online store every morning. You never know what deals you'll find at TC's Rockets. You can also keep up with games by tuning in to their Twitch streams every Tuesday and Friday for live paper magic. Fuel up and check out TC's Rockets today. After that, take those cards for a spin during our webcam leagues, tournaments, and Patreon days over on our Patreon. You get all kinds of benefits for your direct support. Finally, our merchandise store is back. We didn't like the quality of our last store, so we did some research and found a great new provider. The merchandise is much better in our opinion, and we are adding new designs all the time. Check out the podcast description for links to everything mentioned today.
Our Patreon shout out will be Lamb.
Woo! Lamb, thank you for your support.
Good job, Lamb.
So, you want to be the very best that no one ever was? Well, the Major League Commander is the way to go. 10 weeks of amazing gameplay that culminates in the finals, better known as the Mox Bowl.
Yes, both Alex and I are playing this year, and it's already been a journey.
It has. So let's give everyone a chance to understand what Major League Commander, or the MLC, what it is in its entirety. Ashani, could you enlighten us?
The MLC, where Callahan has invited a group of players, content creators, to play a league, and we have drafted a very large amount of decks from his database, and we compete to see who will be the champion of this year's Mox Bowl.
Yeah, the Mox Bowl is like the ultimate goal, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so Callahan, the Mind Sculptors, right? We have a bunch of awesome people, Phoenix, Lurker, oh my god, just a bunch of great individuals that have, right? So if you've ever played any of these people's decks, you just know it's going to be wild. We also saw like a lot of really cool things when they announced the MLC last year, like some of the rules. And Ashan, you got to jump in like halfway through, right?
Yes. Halfway through, I replaced Devontae last year, and it was pretty fun. It was really cool. I played a lot of decks that I didn't ever had the chance to play, so that experience was very cool. And this year I'm here at the beginning, so and we're hoping good things.
Exactly, hoping great things.
Great things.
What was wild about last year in my mind is that you came in last year with the worst record, right?
Yes.
And then you still managed to almost get to the finals.
Yes. I believe I came in 03.
Yeah.
And when we made it to top 16 for somehow, my record was 3-3 at the end of it. So yeah, we rattled off some wins there at the end.
Yeah, you did. That's so cool. Oh my gosh. So Major League Commander, or the MLC, it started it's been going for a little bit now. And one of the things about the MLC that I think is pretty important is that it's not just database lists.
No.
It's right, and it's really a culmination of like what I would consider to be the meta at this time. I would say like, yeah, it's 155 decks and of like the meta of cEDH. as like a whole?
So when they made the database, it was cultivated of decks that top 4 major tournaments, and they did a pretty good job about it. I think my Hulk list got there from the Play with Power top 4, so that was pretty cool. And other decks that is just really spicy brews, fan favorites. It was a very they cultivated a pretty good database of pretty good list. I believe it was pretty exciting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was really excited to see the list that they created, especially because there was a lot of new stuff that they were able to get before, those lists were able to actually get onto the database.
Yes.
Even though, like, once the database did the release, like a few days later, I think, like it now included some of the lists that were curated on the MLC's list, but some like big outliers I think was like Shorekai and Al the Dawn Sky.
Armix Crom.
Just Armix Crom. Armix Crom was a big one. Yeah, there's a few lists that were just like, oh man, that's really cool that we were able to pick them. Turgrid, because I gotta get my Turgrid on. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the first step of the MLC, which was the draft.
Yes, the draft for me was not that great. The draft for me was not that great. How was the draft for you?
The draft for me was fun. I really liked the draft.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the draft for this year was there's 32 players that are playing in the MLC, and of the 32 players, it went down in order. So we were all listed 1 to 32, with the bottom players of the draft being players that placed high in last season's league.
Yes.
And so I made it to the finals last season, and I believe I was like 30 or 29th pick, or maybe 29th
29,
pick, I think.
28. Sounds correct.
Yeah, right around there. And so I was just like, oh, I'm not going to really get any of the decks that I feel are going to present the strongest viability. And so the strategy that I went with was creature-based combos, because I think that creature-based combos are just strong. Like, they're hard to stop. And if your commander is a good value engine and you are doing a creature-based combo, you are in a great spot.
Yes.
You're just in a great spot. So yeah, and so what decks did you pick?
So I went going into the draft. We went through. I think Cody and I and a few others went through the list where, if I saw this pick 1 or pick 2, I would definitely get to it. I saw none of those. I wanted anything 4-color Hermit Druids or 4-color Hulk. None of those came to me. Those all went really, really quickly. So I went with a strategy that I was successful with last year, where those pick decks I never played. So I went with Zera Storm, Yidris Storm, cedh Brute Tyrant layered combo, and Getrog. I chose one deck that is my dear baby, and it was the Getrog monster, and everything was a wild card after.
Everything else is a wild card. So, okay, so when it comes, if you don't know Ashani very well, you will after this podcast, but Ashani is a renowned Getrog player. Like, that has been a consistency in terms of decks that he has played since I've known you.
Yes.
Like when I first met you, you were stomping my face with Getrog.
I've been playing Getrog for a long time. Getrog has come and gone. Hull Breacher came in, nullified the strategy, and then it died a fiery death. Then I was pretty excited about, but Getrog is definitely fun, but we're already 0-1 with the frog, so not a good start.
Yeah. That's a hard thing about playing the classics,
Yes.
right? It's like, oh, you're playing Frog. Okay, you are a threat. Let's deal with you, or let's try to combo a little bit faster than you. Which,
yes.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so playing decks that you're a little unfamiliar with. Which one do you think you're most unfamiliar with?
So the one I was most unfamiliar with, I would believe, would be Yidris Storm. I never really seen Yidris, or I never played against a lot of Yidris. And it was a deck where I believe if the commander never got to like attack and hit, like it all is like a kill on side card. And I think I got into the trap of picking 2 commanders that did that thing, where if it resolves, it never gets to attack. And so that was like the newest thing for me. Zur, I played a lot of Zur when Richie was trying to test it out. Big Richie from the Nexus. So like I never played the deck, but I lost a lot to the deck, so I got to know the ins and outs of it. So I picked it off the back of that. And cedh, that's never played cedh, so I thought that would have been a cool Sultai list to play.
Yeah.
But what?
Yeah, I've definitely got a chance to scrimmage with you a little bit when you're playing Zur, and I've seen the frustrations you've had.
Oh, it was pretty rough. It was like I gave up. I saw the flaws of the deck, and I'm like, I'm just gonna play whatever happens. I did not get the good testing that you got with Tergrid. You man. We've played some games, people, where every time someone is trying to combo off, Alex is saying, "Hold on, let him do his thing. I have tricks," and I'm like, "You're in mono black, sir. Like, what tricks do you have?" And then there's some tricks that happen, and we just lose, and then we're all in all like, what happened here? It definitely has surprised a lot of people. At least it surprised me that mono black had that. At least had legs. Like if it was a Crick or cedh Nas. Like there's a good mid range value. It's very oppressive. Tergrid is a very oppressive commander.
Yeah. There's been a lot. I've had a lot of luck, fortunately, with being able to brew a lot of mono black decks. I think just because of playing so much Crick, I was like, I'm pretty familiar with mono black now. And when I went to draft my lists, one of the decks, we'll talk about my drafts in a second, but yeah, just being able to surprise people with stuff, I think is really important for the MLC, because there's just a lot of like tricky stuff that people are doing, and I want to have like kind of backup plans for most situations.
Right.
Cool.
What did you get?
Okay, so so I got Kinnan, Crick, Tergrid, and Al the Dawn Sky. And like looking back at the draft, one thing that I knew from the get-go is I wanted Kinnan. Like that was like deck number 1 for me that I wanted. And then I wanted Crick because I wanted a creature-based deck that could win through pretty much any, except for maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the cards that Crick doesn't win through. Crick doesn't win through Digger's Cage.
Right.
Graph Digger's Cage. I think that's it, though. I think every other stacks... Oh, and Humility. All the other stacks pieces Crick can win through. And so I felt very strong about picking Crick. And I felt good about it. And then I drafted Al the Dawn Sky because I was really high on Al. Like, I was like, oh, man, this commander's so much fun. Like, I had been brewing the list with, like, Phoenix and the mono white guy and Scorish. Like, all these, like, really cool players, like, that are just, like, Gustav. All these cool players that I think are really good brewers. We just had been, like, brainstorming on how to make this list really good. And so I was like, oh, let me get that. And then I picked it, and I was like, why did I do this? Like... What was I thinking? Because like I as of this recording, I've yet to win a game on Owl. Like,
wow.
And I've played a lot of games. Yeah. And so I was like, dang, that sucks. So with that being said, I was really trying to trade, but the date was like got confused in my mind. I wanted to get old Sticky Fingers.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. I was like, oh man, this is what am I doing? This is a creature based combo that is in black. Like, this is way better. Like, what am I doing? And so, but it is what it is. So those are my 4 decks. Kinnan, Crick, Turgid, and Owl. Turgid was my last pick, and people were really confused with my last pick because there's a lot of other decks that I think people feel are better, which is fine. But I played Turgid before, and I was like, I feel like if I give this deck some actual time and really try and think about how this deck can be effective, I think I could make something out of it.
I think when it first came out, I believe we tried brewing something with it, and it was like, okay, it does stuff. The meta is Underworld Breach. It does a lot of things. There's a lot of wheels. Like, it's oppressive, but I don't think I think you sat down with it, and I think you got it to where I definitely think is 100% viable strategy in this meta.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I now, like, playing the deck now, I wish I could change it now, knowing like what I know about the deck and like how certain cards play.
Right.
Like, I now know that if I were to run some more stacks pieces, not necessarily like discard stacks pieces, but like just Trinisphere, the deck becomes so much more impressive. Like, there was a board state that I played a little while ago now, where someone had played a Trinisphere and I had a Smokestacks, and I was like, oh, this synergy is crazy.
Yeah.
Because you can't cast spells after a certain point. Like, if Smokestack hits 3, you no longer have the mana to cast literally any spells, and I have all your stuff. Like, it is ridiculously impressive. And so I just started really feeling like good about that, and finding just like cards that just have weird synergies, like Strionic Resonator. I didn't like, at first I thought, oh, this is cute because it goes infinite with Sands of Time, and the backside of Turgid, and so in your upkeep you can just win the game, because of the way you can layer those effects. But then I also saw like other things, like so I need to be able to copy triggered abilities. Okay, what triggered abilities could I also copy? Oh, I can copy Memory Jar's triggered ability, and what happens with Turgid is you with Memory Jar, if you don't know what Memory Jar does, you sacrifice it, you put your hand aside, and you draw 7 cards, and then at the end step, there's a triggered ability where you'll discard the 7 cards that you drew and then put the cards back into your hand that you set aside. But with Strionic Resonator and Turgid,
they get nothing.
That end step effect happens twice. So you put those cards back, you discard the 7 cards you originally had, you put the cards that you set aside in your hand, and then you do it again, you discard your hand, and you have no cards that were in exile now, and now no one has a hand, and I have everything, and I am the king of the world. So there's like a lot of really interesting like things that are like that are weird, that just do funky things in my list now. And then there is like cards like Void Winnower and Ulamog, just like random big things that you don't think would be useful, but they really are. And then in Kinnan really, like, I really teched a lot of cards in there to like deal with a lot of stuff. Like, I know that I couldn't get around like those like silent stuff, or specifically like if someone does a creature based combo and they want to win with Deafening Silence on the battlefield, or with a Ranger Captain. So I wanted my Kinnan activations to be able to hit things that made sense. So like Mystic Snake is a card I added to Kinnan.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that card, like, it's great because it's like, oh, it's an ETB, it's a creature. Like, it's just so hard to deal with, and I can get it off a Kinnan spin. which is something I really wanted. I'm also running Trick Bind. I'm really trying to Trick Bind a Storm Trigger.
That
really
deck has evolved so much since I first saw it. Oh wow! Like this deck has I don't know. I love to see the journey that this deck has went through. It was definitely amazing. It was a battle where I've called many of those cards bad, real bad cards, and then when you just lose to them, like I don't know if you're still on the Terracidon just clone.
Yeah.
Like okay, you just get nothing, and here's your 3/3s that cannot hit me because I have large creatures in play. I'm like, okay, yeah. This is what is happening, and people are like, oh, what is going to happen? He has a Seaborn Muse. I'm like, we can just concede. We're like, no, let him play through. I'm like, okay, it's okay. We all need to learn what this deck does together. And yes.
You definitely preached that. Like, Seaborn Muse resolved. I'm gonna pass the turn. It didn't die. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's what we're doing. That's what we're living. Okay.
Pack it up, guys. I'm like, no, we have removal. I'm like, it's too late. It's absolutely too late. There's no coming back. I'm like, no, he's not doing that. I'm like, okay, here's a Terracidon into a Phantasmal Image into a clone. Yes. Are you okay now? Yes. Maybe. What was it? Nyx Bloom Agent making like 40-something mana a turn. Oh, the nonsense that deck does. Yes.
The nonsense indeed. Yeah. There was there's just like the deck is just like, something I've just worked on for so long now. In comparison to like Owl, the Dawn Sky, which is like a really weird commander that does this thing that's like kind of cool. Like it does put stuff onto the battlefield, but it's so hard to set up. It's like a 3-4 card combo, and like I don't know. It's just a weird deck. I'm not used to playing mono white, and so I'm trying to like get better at it. But
it's an experiment
with things.
It's an experiment.
Yeah, it's an experiment. Yeah, but I only have to play it one time because I got a draw in my first. Oh, we'll talk about that soon. In my first game, there was a draw, so I only have to play it one time this season, which
That's
I'm really excited
awesome.
about. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the decks, these are the decks we picked. But what are some of the things that you are worried about in the MLC?
So what I was worried about in the MLC as a whole, the division, is that the correct term? The division that I'm in is very. What can I say? It's very creature based. I did not expect that in the decks that I picked, and I think in my division there is Helenium, there is Killstars, and there is Ink Moth, and Ink Moth went with mono green all the way. He went mono green all the way, and Killstars is a very good player. Very good player, and Killstars is also a very greedy player. And so I'm like, I'm in a pod where there's not a lot of mid-range and not a lot of wiggle room. And so that was my thing. So I was like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to survive this division, but I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try to play for second because at the moment, we're not going to be the king of the hill. That was my worry of it. Just how am I going to navigate through this division?
Yeah, it's really tough. I think Killstars is an amazing player. He's really intense in terms of like his lines of play, where he will let a possibly game-winning spell resolve because he wants to save his interaction for his win on his turn, versus trying to just brute force his win with no interaction in hand. And so I think with that being said, I don't believe mono green has the flexibility it needs for the pods that I believe you all are going to be playing in. And so it's going to feel like it's going to feel like this. It's going to be like you're going to try, or Killstars is going to try to win. you're gonna try to interact with him, and then you use all your interaction, and then you're gonna try to win, and maybe Hellenium interacts with you, and then out of nowhere, Inkmoth comes in because everyone's using interaction, and there's like a parasitic feel, especially with like Yeva or what's the other non-storm deck? Titania?
Yeah, he did. I don't believe he picked Titania.
He
no,
didn't?
I think he went...
Oh, no. It was Marwyn, Sylvala, Yeva, and...
maybe he did pick Titania.
No, it was the other Ashaya. Yeah. And so with that being said, I also foresee if you can't, in terms of speed, beat Killstars in terms of just raw speed for their decks, then you might be also in a sticky spot. It's tough.
Yes.
It's you have a tough pot for sure.
Very tough division. And it was like, I think we all respected mono green in our deck building at the same time, because I think we all have at least one form of sweeper in there. And so it's like, I think we respected what mono green can do, and at the same time trying to deal with 3 other greedy players. So it was like when I saw the division, I'm like, this is a really tough division. Like, I believe they were talking about the division of death, which was like Sick, Ian, and someone else, and I'm like, that's a tough division, but that division is also very mid range, and I think that there's a lot of players that there will be a lot of politics and a slower grind versus the division that I am. And I'm not like trying to put down or say that my division is hard or anything. I'm just saying just the style of players that is broken up, right? And even in your division, you also have a very tough division.
Yeah. I think my division's hard only because the decks that I'm playing against are very storm oriented, and I did not and I didn't really pick, like, I pretty much picked mid range lists, with the exception of Crick, but even my Crick list is fairly mid range, so like I'm not terribly worried about getting completely blown out, but I am like very cognizant of it. Thassa specifically is something that scares me because mono black loses to Thassa. Like, there's no cards in either Crick or Turgid that stops specifically Thassa's ETB. Right. And so I am worried about that, but I also realize that like I've played in my home pod for the first week. I played Turgid with the intention of dealing with some of the core strategies that the decks I saw in my pod had. Okay. And so like that was a big thing for me, but I'm mostly worried about the shift into like really greedy plays that result in like incidental king making. Right. Like that's the only thing I'm really worried about in the MLC. But I feel like, I don't know, the players are really, really good. So I don't know if there's going to be any king making, but it
won't be king making, but it could accidentally happen. Like just a sandbag of, I'm going to go for it because I don't believe I have another turn. And that could be, sure. You're just going to try to force a win. And then it could just cause interaction being used that didn't need to be used. And that's okay. And that's just the game we play and we love. That's how the cookie crumbles sometimes.
Absolutely. So we're worried about certain things, like, you know, when we picked our lists, what were some of the things that when you were brewing your lists that you were like, okay, like you talked about green, you're like, I'm going to include sweepers because green has all the creatures. What were some other things that you added to your list?
So when I brewed the list, I think I brewed with a few people, and we were like, I think the one thing I was very cautious about was I needed spot removal. I needed a few amount of spot removal because there will be some problematic creatures that I needed to remove. I don't think I was more on like countering on nulls or anything like that. I think I was either try to go under or try to survive. And that was more a lot of my mindset going into the deck building. I think I slotted in Pernicious Deed in CDC. Like that's how
Yes.
deep I went, where I was like, there might be a board state where I cannot win through, or I can just set this card on the board and know what it plays into it while I build my own game plan. Because for Pernicious Deed is a 1 green black enchantment where it reads pay X, sacrifice it. For X, destroy creature, artifact, enchantment. And for X or less, where X is what you put into it. So it is a pretty good stack piece. And some people call it slow. It is slow. It doesn't deal with problems right away, but I think is a really good card. And Zer, I think was my really big project with deck building, because I just didn't know what way to go with it. Should I go mid-range? Should I go Storm? And I settled with Storm, where I settled with, I'm just going to try turn 1, turn 2 Zer. And if I get blown out, I get blown out. And I'm okay with that. And that was the way I built it. I'm just trying to see Necro for 38 or whatever the number is, and try to see an Oracle and a reanimation spell. And that is my game plan. And if you get me with it, then so be it. I'm not trying to game the thing. I tried to do something cute with the Idris, and I was told no, a very firm no, by the organizers. So I was kind of sad about that. But yes, that is what happened. But I think that deck building, that's what I had going into it. Just respect the creatures that I'm going to see, respect the value engines, and play more spot removal. That was my deck building idea. What was yours?
When it came to deck building, it was really teching for anything. So like in Kinnan, like I said before, I added Mystic Snake and Trickbind. In Tergrid, I'm running Shrionic Resonator specifically for a couple like infinite lines, but also for some cute stuff like I have Tinglewire in the list, and you can copy the Tinglewire trigger to tap down someone's stuff. And I was like really just trying to I actually just thought of something right now, and I need to see this right now. I really need to read this card. Okay, let's talk about Tanglewire for a second. Tanglewire. This artifact enters the battlefield with 4 fade counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a fade counter. If you can't, okay. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player taps an untapped artifact, creature, or land they control for each fade counter on Tanglewire. This artifact enters the battlefield. That's not a triggered ability. Okay, for a second, I thought I could copy the Fading 4 trigger. So if it was like when this artifact enters the battlefield, put 4 fade counters on it. I was about to copy that and put 8 fade counters on it.
No, okay, let's calm down, sir. That is naughtiness there. Naughty. That is...
Sorry, I digress. Okay. So, in terms of, so, that was a big thing, having like really cool effects like that can just do some wonky stuff with Tergrid. So Tergrid specifically, Crick, Kinnan, and Owl the Dawn Sky all had lists that I'm loosely basing what I ended up with.
Okay.
But Tergrid did not. Tergrid did not have a list that I based my list on at all. Like the list that the Mind Sculptors posted for Turgid was based off Cobblepot's really heavy hand disruption list, which in testing really felt more dirtily than anything else, because I couldn't win. Like, I would be in great positions where I would have Turgid and all the discard things, and I have everyone's board on my board, and I couldn't put a win together. And that to me felt really like awful, because it was like, I did all the things, like, you don't have a hand, and like, I'm waiting for you to basically scoop, because what the board condition I've created is just not hard. You can't win through it, but I can't win either. So this weird stalemate.
And you can't control the top of the deck.
Exactly, and I cannot control the top of the deck. So I went to the drawing board with Turgid. I went through a KCI loop thing. I did like really hard hand disruption, and then Scotty, our fan Scoots, he has a Nashi list that is like really crazy, and I was like, oh, let me look at this mono black good stuff tribal list, and I really liked what he had there. I liked the setup, and so I used that as kind of my template, and then I started adding cards that are synergistic with Turgid, because I figured out that Turgid was one of those commanders that just gets blown out so easily, because people like to just kill Turgid, and then I'm like, oh gosh, what do I do now? So I made a lot of commander agnostic combos in the deck that are synergetic with Turgid if I happen to get Turgid onto the battlefield. So that was a big thing for me, to just really lean into the commander / creature centric combos. And then that was for me, that was a big thing, and that led to the beginning of our games, where in my first game I got a turn 1 Tangle Wire, and it turns out that a turn 1 Tangle Wire stops a lot of decks, specifically Anala from winning turn 2. And so for me, that was like a big deal. It was like, okay, like, I put this piece in here for a specific reason. I was able to get it out at the time that I needed to get it out. And I no longer felt like, oh, I'm just going to get blown out here because the Adnos player or the Anala player is just going to win now, versus having to deal with my stacks pieces as they come out. Yeah. How have your games gone by so far?
My games, I just got blown out by Killstars. Killstars played his baby of Tim Natana Hermit Pod, and we got turn 1 Archon into turn 2 another stack piece, and he just Timmed us to death. And game 2 he played the same deck, and How was on Prosper, and he was going to resolve at Adnos, and I said, nope, I prefer to be 0-2 to Killstars instead of being your 1-1. I'm playing to my outs. So I countered Cody's ad nauseum, and then Killstars won the next turn.
Ah, dang. Well, you played to your outs,
I'm
man.
like, listen, it's easier if we're all 0 wins and he's 2 wins. I can play for second that way.
Yeah, and you mentioned that earlier. Like, I'm gonna play for second. Like, I feel like that's part of that game.
That is part of that game plan. He was not happy, but hey, it's a league. We gotta play to our outs here.
Yeah. Is there a deck that you are most worried about in the MLC?
From another player?
Yeah, from any player in the MLC.
No.
Mm-hmm.
No. Mm-hmm. I am sad my darling Corvold, that Sage God, is being played by someone else. But other than that, no. I really don't. Are you? Is there a deck that you wish not to see?
Probably Godo. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think Anala and Godo are just such strong decks. I don't know why I feel this way. I just like, they just are so consistent. And same thing with Armix Crom. That's another list that I think is just, it's always turn 1 Armix, turn 2 kill your stuff.
Yes.
Like it's just so good at doing that. So I'm like I'm pretty worried about those decks, but I don't play those decks very often. Like I don't get a chance to play against them, so I'm not terribly like, oh gosh, the boogeymans of the draft. But I'm not too overwhelmed by any other decks at this time, because I think a lot of the decks are good. I think that like there's nothing that really stands out to me outside of that.
I don't think anything really stands out to me either. Like I think everything is on the same playing field, on the same level. That there's a fear of whatever the deck is. But no, I don't think a deck specifically. No, I am not afraid of anything specifically as a deck.
I am okay. I'm gonna take one thing back. Shorkai, only because that's a humility deck, and Kinnan literally just cannot handle humility. Like that's just not.
That is true. That is very true.
Yeah.
Sadly, I got my reps with Shurikai because Diggles was a big player of Shurikai, so I know the in and outs of Shurikai, so I'm not too afraid of Shurikai. I think like for maybe pilots, I maybe look out for a pilot of a deck like Ian on did Ian get his Bruce?
Ian on anything scares me.
right, exactly.
Like I don't care. Like he could be piloting a precon. I don't care. It scares me. Like I don't care.
I think Ian on exactly Bruce Rastios. I don't remember if he got Bruce. I think he did. I'm not sure, but maybe Ian on Bruce is like my number one fear. But no, other than that, no. Hopefully, Keenan and you. I'm like I'm just not ready for that. I'm just. Whatever it is, I'm just keeping like a delusion. Whatever that is. Just deluge.
Call it a
deluge, call it a day.
Yeah, that's fair. I ain't mad at it, man. Awesome. All right. So, what do you listeners, you awesome listeners, thank you for joining the podcast. What do you think about Major League Commander? What decks do you think will go all the way? Please let us know in any of the comments that you're allowed to make at this time. We want to, again, give a huge thanks to our sponsor, TC's Rockets, and listeners like you on Patreon. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a comment, like this video, and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Make sure, if you're listening to us, give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast aggregator. You'd be surprised how much it helps. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and more. All links are in the episode notes.
Alrighty, well, that's about it. We're about to wrap this up for this episode of the podcast. Tune in next time for the next episode, and the next time we talk about our favorite format in our favorite game, Magic the Gathering. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.